Hello, welcome to Creative Catchup,
a podcast where myself, Natasha Newton,
artist and illustrator, and me, Mel Chadwick,
illustrator and designer, will be chatting about running a creative business.
Each episode we'll be diving into a different topic that has come up in our own creative practice.
We'll be sharing our experiences, both the ups and downs, struggles and successes,
and hopefully give some advice that you'll also find useful.
So join us for episode 3
as we chat about the pitfalls of comparison,
how easy it is to fall into it,
and how we found ways to break the cycle. Hi, Natasha.
Hi, Mel.
So today we're going to be talking about another topic which I think is really relevant and which really affects a lot of us, and that is comparison. So I want to start by asking you, Natasha, what do you feel about comparison? Is that something that you find you have to battle with?
Yeah, I think sometimes more than others. It's something that is there quite a lot. I think it would be anyway, but I think social media makes it worse, or kind of amplifies it. I guess it depends a little bit on how well you feel you're doing yourself. If you're going through a particularly bad time, then the comparison monster rears its ugly head again.
I like how you refer to it as a monster. Gives an impression that it's lurking somewhere.
It is. I think it is. It's lurking, ready to pounce when you're feeling low, I think. I think that's what happens. It certainly does with me anyway.
Yeah, so how do you kind of combat it?
I think one of the biggest things for me is to try and have like a gratitude for where I am on my journey. And that's not always the easiest thing, because you can be feeling really happy about something. Say, you've got a brilliant job has come along, or you've had some great sales or something. But then the moment you look at somebody else and you see them doing so many amazing things, and you feel like they're doing it so much better than you, it can take away the joy. Because they always say comparison is the thief of joy, don't they?
Yeah.
And so it takes away the joy you had in your achievement. So it's that thing of being focused on what you're achieving, and not paying too much attention to other people and what they're up to. But as I said, that's easier said than done.
I often think that artists maybe 20 years ago, do you think they would have had it a little bit easier? And I'm just thinking of that purely in the sense of Instagram and social media not being around. Or do you think they would have struggled with it then as well?
I think they would have struggled with it. I think they probably have always struggled with it. But I think it's 10 times worse now. I think social media makes it very easy for you to see what other people are doing. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it isn't. And you're seeing the best bits of their life. And that's what you have to keep in mind as well.
It's all curated, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
that's not true to life. As yourself, you normally are on a journey. You know the difficult times, you know when it gets really hard, and also how you've struggled to create something. But then for some reason, we want to omit all of that when we put it on our Instagram. We want to almost say, let's just cherry pick the moments that best reflect my practice. And so then when people are looking at what you've done, they just see a very smooth journey, which isn't typical of how you've even got there.
I think some people do this more than others. They make everything look very easy, even maybe when it hasn't been. And one thing I did try to do a few months ago was, because I found that since my Instagram has grown to where I'm at now, which is like 98,000 people assume that I got there easily. And they don't realise it's actually been a 7-year journey to get to that point. 7 years of constantly posting. And for many years, I was just on a few thousand. And then one day I did a post that kind of, I guess the algorithm picked up on it. And then things started rolling from there. And that was like about 3 years ago or so. But it took me a long time to get here. And I do try to actually point that out to people. I did write a post about that and said it may look like, this has been very easy, but actually it was anything but. That people know that, because it gives them hope. Because I had several people saying, oh, well, this makes me feel better about where I am now, because if it happened to you, it could happen to me. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's good to look at what other people have achieved and see it as aspirational rather than let it demoralize you. You end up feeling bad about where you are. I think what you need to do is look at other people and say, well, if they managed to do that, so can I.
And everyone, I think, is on their own journey. It's funny, when you're younger, you kind of not really your own person, because you don't really know maybe what you like or what you don't like, because you're so often told this is what you should be doing. Yeah. And I think when you're younger, then comparison with others is what you're used to. That's why it's important as you get older and you mature in your tastes and what you like and dislike, and the same in your art, is really reflective of you and what you enjoy and you put into your work. You can no longer make those kind of comparisons with other peers, because it's like comparing apples with pears. You're so far from that now. It doesn't make any sense to compare what you're doing with them, because your work is completely personal to you and unique. I was just thinking about standards, because obviously you've got to have some standards. How do you know whether you're improving or not, or whether you're getting better or worse?
So it does help to have something to compare yourself to in certain respects, doesn't it?
But what is it that where do those standards come from? When I do my sketchbook workshops, I give out sketchbooks, and I say to anyone who comes along, don't rip out your pages, simply because every time you put new work in, you're building like a chronological order of your work, and you can then see how you're progressing. So you can look back to those first pages when you were feeling like, I really don't know what I'm doing. But because you've kept going and kept working on it, you can then see progress. And I think sometimes that's maybe the standard that you should be comparing yourself with, rather than comparing yourself with someone else who may be at a completely different point of their journey, bringing it back to your journey and what you've achieved so far.
I think that's an interesting point, kind of, bettering yourself compared to what you have achieved before. I know that they said, funnily enough, there's another YouTube thing, but they said that with your analytics, just make sure that your videos are doing better than your previous videos. Don't worry about how other people's videos are doing compared to yours. So it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? It's like use yourself to compare against, rather than, somebody else who's on a totally different journey.
Yeah, use yourself as the measuring stick.
Yeah.
Your past self as the measuring stick.
Yeah.
But also don't beat yourself up either. If you find that some days it's just not, you're just not in the groove, you're just not working. I just think you need to be gentle as well with yourself. Not exhaust yourself or beat yourself up, or thinking again that you've set some unrealistic kind of goal. And you fail before you even put a pen on the paper, because the goal is just too unattainable. I think it's got to be small steps, really.
Exactly, yeah. Because if it is an unattainable goal, and you're always falling short of this, this thing that you've decided you need to be, or where you need to be, you're going to be constantly unhappy and demoralised. And then that just stops you from doing anything. It's like the comparison monster. It never stops, because you reach one thing and then you just move the goalposts. So you're constantly unhappy, aren't you?
Yeah. Do you find that sometimes you reach a goal, but you're so consumed by having to keep going that you don't celebrate reaching that milestone. It almost like passes you by. Like maybe a few months ago, you wanted to reach that goal and you were like desperate for it. And then by the time you've reached it, you're already on to another one.
Yeah, I think that's how my brain works. Yeah, and it's really annoying. I find this a very difficult thing to deal with. I do try to make the time to sort of slow down a little bit and just look at those little victories and, you know, all the little great things that happen, and just actually take the time to acknowledge them and celebrate them. Because you're right, you know, it's kind of non-stop really. You reach one goal and then you're on to the next one and on to the next one. And yeah, I think it is important to do that.
It's like what you said before about how do you stop the comparison? Well, be grateful, have gratitude for where you are. And so I guess that celebrating like a milestone, or celebrating new work that you've done, or celebrating a new job that's come along, is a bit like pausing, isn't it? And saying thank you, and having that gratitude for how far you've come. And
yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of being able to overcome that, because you don't want it to take away the joy in what you're achieving. You'll be constantly unhappy if, you know, you keep comparing. You're always going to find somebody else to compare again. You know, say there's somebody you feel is doing really well. Well, when you reach where they are, you're going to be looking at the next person, you know, oh, but that person has managed to do this. And then that's what I mean about moving the goalposts. You're just constantly moving the goalposts.
Exactly. But there's always going to be someone who's going to be ahead of you. It doesn't matter. There's always going to be someone who's ahead of you, and there's always going to be people who are behind you. There's always going to be all these different levels, and which is why you'll either be looking up, you know, thinking someone is better than you, or you'll be looking down thinking you're better than them, because that's the other side, isn't it, of comparison.
It is, but I don't feel like that.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it was for me to get to where I am. So when I look at the people with, say, I don't know, less followers or less sales or whatever it is, whatever, you know, stick you're using to measure this, I just think, you know, I was there not that long ago, you know, and something could happen to them tomorrow and they could just be, you know, skyrocketing. You know, it's difficult if you have dreams and you really want to achieve them, and it's really difficult and you can't quite get there. It's hard when you know, it's at those times, I think, where you start comparing yourself to other people. It's a strange thing and it's very hard to overcome. So do you feel like this? Do you compare yourself? How often does it strike for you?
I think it kind of comes and goes. I know like what I have to be careful of. I always find if I am stuck on a piece of work, it's always better for me to either do another piece or work on something else, or go out for a walk. Just go out and clear my head, go for a walk. Look at what's around me, be thankful for what I've got. And another thing is that my husband, he will often be my creative pep talker and will say to me, remind me, don't you remember you managed to accomplish that? Don't you remember you did this and you did that?
That's so
and
great.
So that again will help, because it will stop me from wanting to go and see what others are doing. But I have to be careful that I don't end up kind of having a pity party as well.
Totally.
That's another kind of thing that happens. If you start kind of thinking, oh no, I'll never achieve anything, this is never going to happen, you end up feeling sorry for yourself. And when you start feeling like that, you then are giving the power away to change.
Yeah, because you're not in the right frame of mind to do what you need to do in order to get to where you want to be.
Exactly. And you just feel like, the circumstance won't change. Everyone is better than me. The only way you can stop it is just to switch off your device and put it down and just step outside of yourself. I know this sounds a bit harsh, but you have to start thinking about yourself.
But you're right. You're completely right. Yeah, it's very self-indulgent in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's really hard sometimes to realise.
Yeah.
Which is why I guess gratitude is where you're not thinking of yourself, you're thinking of things around you which are you can be thankful for. If you want, another way is to be thankful for what's happening in other people's lives. Instead of like thinking in your head when you look at someone else's work, I really can't achieve that. Look at what is good about it and write a comment that says that.
Yeah.
So you are acting in the opposite spirit.
That's very good advice, yeah.
So it forces you to focus on someone else rather than on you. It changes your kind of mindset.
It does. That's a good piece of advice, a really good way of dealing with it. And I think also to bear in mind that person probably is also dealing with all of this, because I don't think anyone is completely immune to it. No matter how successful you are, how well you're doing, everyone is feeling like that.
You often feel inferior to what you see, but there is the other side of feeling superior. And the thing is, they both come from the same place of looking at self more than looking at others.
I guess, yes, it comes from your ego, doesn't it? Yeah.
Whether you feel your ego is better or whether you feel your ego is lower, it's still the same.
It is, you're right. Yeah, it's like two sides to the same coin. Is that what they'd say?
Yeah, you end up, if you feel superior, you end up like feeling everything is a competition and you get quite competitive.
Yeah.
You also, find it hard when people give you criticism, or you get defensive if people try to show you up or point out something that isn't quite right.
Yeah.
Or, that kind of thing. And also like not be teachable. So you don't think that you can learn anything.
Yes. And it's so important, isn't it, to be open to learning things and seeing what other people are doing and then adapting it to your own circumstances.
Yeah. So you generally find, I guess, that you're more blind to what other people are doing when you feel superior or you feel your work is better. You don't acknowledge.
I think that might be quite dangerous, because I think it doesn't allow room for growth. If you just think that you're right all the time or that you're the best, where do you go from there? I think a little bit of self-doubt is a very good thing. I do think it keeps you growing and learning, but you just have to not allow it to get to the stage where it becomes this paralysing kind of force, and you just become so totally demoralised. You think, why am I even bothering?
And that comes back to having an aim for yourself and having a focus for yourself. What is it that you want to see develop in your practice?
Yeah.
What is it that you want to grow into? Because if you don't have a focus for your practice, you'll just be led by other people and what they happen to be focusing on.
Yeah, so it's like, instead of just going down your one path, which will lead you to where you want to be probably much more directly and quickly, you'll be going off on all these other little roads leading off, wouldn't you? Because you're very influenced by other people, and they're doing that. Oh, I'll have a go. But then it takes you off where you're actually, you're wanting to go yourself. I think this is the thing of having a proper goal and knowing where you're going, rather than it's like this thing of being influenced by trends. I think I try not to do that too much with my work. You see this on social media, certainly. You'll see there will be a trend for a particular topic or a particular colour palette or something like that. And then lots of people will jump on it, and you kind of think, should I be doing that too? And then I think, no, just go make the work that you really believe in, that comes from your experiences, because, all of us are living a different life and we all have our very own personal experiences. So we all have something to say through our work. And I think that the best work comes from when you are being completely authentic and you're expressing what's in you, rather than it becoming this diluted trend following work. that doesn't really mean that much to you, you know?
Say if you're working as a commercial illustrator and you are given trends to follow and you are given colour palettes that you know are on brand for that year, you know, like the Pantone colour of the year. I know that I've, you know, been given that, you know, by my agent, like, at times for greetings cards, and you know, florals are always popular, you're told, and like, you know, this year llamas are making a kind of appearance. And I don't know, I think sometimes there is you have to do that work if you want to sell in that space, but at the same time you have to find your own style and interpretation of the brief. Otherwise you do end up with very similar looking pieces. Is it like a house style, and you end up having copycats of the same piece, which look all great together, but, you know, I don't know if it helps you personally as an illustrator.
Yeah, I think sometimes you do have to be a bit more commercial, obviously, if you're working primarily as an illustrator, you know, and you're dealing with clients. I think you can also do it in your own way and still not being too concerned with what everyone else is doing, because it's always better to have, you know, something that's fresh looking and unique looking than, you know, all this stuff that looks the same.
Yeah. But it's so hard at first especially when you're first kind of trying to work in that market and you're trying to find what sells, and you see other artists kind of saying that they've got licenses for all of these pieces, and then you think, oh, should I be now producing those pieces? You see the negative aspect, I guess, of comparison, because you just end up replicating what's there. And
yeah, I think probably everyone, if they're honest, has been in that position at some point. Yeah, and it is difficult. I think it's important to stick to your own path, and even if you are doing that kind of thing, you need to know, you know, your style. How are you going to interpret it so it's different to everybody else's? And yeah, it's not always easy. Certainly when you're starting out, it isn't easy. I know that I used to be much more influenced by other artists. I think when you're less sure of yourself and you're earlier on in your career, like we were saying, it's much easier to be influenced by other people.
I think that's why I ended up taking up sketchbooking, and just to fit alongside my commercial stuff. And that's what's so nice, isn't it, about when you actually find what you're doing and you want to do. You may not know everything that you're going to gain, but you pick up things as you go along, and comparing with others just doesn't make any sense, does it? Because it just totally distracts from what you're doing and what your aim is. It would just take you off another path.
Yeah, it's an unnecessary distraction, I think, and it really helps to know other people are going through it. Because if ever others have mentioned this, you know, it does help. So you don't feel so alone in your kind of doubting, but, you know, those moments you have where you're just feeling not quite good enough. And I think a little bit of that is healthy, but too much of it is paralysing and demoralising. And so you need to find that balance. And I think it's really important not to live your life around social media. I know there are times where I have to just step back a little bit from Instagram. I would say other social media as well, but to be honest, I barely use Twitter or Facebook. I post on them now and again, but it's not like I do on Instagram. But it's important to take a step back, because it can be really detrimental to your work and to your focus. Yeah.
I guess, like you said, we just need to keep that monster on a tight leash, I think.
Yes, don't keep feeding him.
Yeah. And you are in control. You are in control. I think that's the important thing. The power is in your hands.
Yeah.
Not in that little monster.
Yes.
Because as soon as you give him control, he will get you.
Yeah, give him an inch and he'll take a mile.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, Natasha, what is it that we're going to be talking about on our next episode?
We're going to be talking about the interesting topic of building a community, how to find your tribe, and how to communicate with them effectively.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to that one.
So am I. I think this is a really good topic.
Thanks again for tuning in to another episode with myself and Natasha. If you have any more comments or feedback on what you've just heard, please drop us a line in our YouTube or our Instagram, which you can find at
creative_catchup.
Please share with your friends or other people who you think will find this useful, and we'll speak to you again soon.